Kia ora. As Pre said, Joe Kari, and I've led FISC for the last, since October last year, so still relatively new, so just over 12 months in the role, but maybe just laying out forestry credentials, because that's important. So I did join the New Zealand Forest Service as a ranger trainee, and was a part of the 1980 intake, so a fair while ago. Some characters still in the bush, and I was a silver contractor, mostly for PF Olsen's for a period of time before taking off and working and doing a few things, and then working in HR for 20 odd years, and some of that's been in related industries, Norsa Skog, as GMHR at Carl Harvey Wood Products, HR manager at Red Stag, White Power Process Plant. So I've still got a little bit of wood fibre in the blood, I guess that's what I'm saying. So I want to talk to you about certification. So, but I want to ask a question first. So I'm going to say, when you're at a barbecue, actually there might not be many barbecues at the moment, but when you're out meeting people socially, and you are meeting with non-forestry people, and you have a bit of a yarn, what do you do? What do your kids do? What do you do? And you say, well, I work in forestry. What do people, when you talk to them, what do you think their perceptions of forestry are? When you say, what are the things that come to mind for them, looking from the outside, looking into forestry? What do people say? Honesty? Dangerous, unsafe. Yep. I've asked this question many times. It's the first one comes out. What else do they say?
Environmental impact.
Environmental impact. Is everyone a slash expert these days? Yeah. Okay. What else do they say?
Some of them don't say anything.
Some of them don't say anything. Yeah, but look at you. That industry, unsafe, environmental stuff, dangerous. All of those things. And I've got to tell you, every time I ask a question, it's exactly the same. Quite often people say, they think we're a bunch of cowboys. Hey? Do you hear? And I guess, one that's honest, but two, my heart sinks a bit when I think about, the levels of professionalism within the industry that I certainly see. So why is this in a future-proofing workshop? I guess in many ways, because I'm going to talk about certification, but when we talk about how people see the industry, it goes straight to the heart of, do we have a social licence to operate? Should we be working? To the point when there have been several fatalities in the industry, at one stage, I might have been around 2014, the CEO of WorkSafe at the time said, if you can't harvest safely, you can't harvest. And for me, that goes to the heart of a social licence to operate. Yep. So we think that certification is one of the levers in terms of trying to address that. So there is an error in there. I thought 2023 should be 2013. So just talking about fatality. So you would actually, Paul, I think you talked about the reported fatality this morning in Dannevirke, is that right? Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about that because it's all pretty fresh. Sounds like a farmer asked someone to fell some trees. Looks like they picked up a trucking contractor with a few good old boys that would come down and cross-cut for them. And so they fell these trees. And then they've taken off, and for some reason one person's been left behind, possibly to go later, but they left one person behind on site, and that person has continued to fell some trees and has ended up under there. So that's what we know. So investigators are there at the moment. So a couple of things for me, sounds pretty dodgy, and when you think about how people see us, that sort of aligns, with that view, but certainly not my view of professionals of crews or how they would manage, a job like that. So, 2013, we were killing people at a rate of one a month, more or less, one a month. And that was the burning platform, of course, at that time, where a lot of pressure from people like Helen Kelly from the CTU to have an independent forestry review. And that was great that it was an independent forestry review, because if we hadn't have done it, then the government would have done it. Yeah, so we're still in control of our destiny. So so I had the review, and an outcome of that were a couple of things. Number one, the creation of the Forest Industry Safety Council, which effectively becomes the single lead voice around health and safety within the sector. I don't know many sectors that have something similar, a few, but not many. I was talking to ACC last week about exactly that. This is still a relatively new model. So and the second thing was a recognition that there wasn't consistency in terms of the assurance programs that forestry had with respect to health and safety systems. So as a result of that, Safetree initiated the process around introducing the Safetree Certification. So the health and safety standard that's in the certification at the moment, it was created by both the industry and WorkSafe. So when people say, where did you get that standard from? Well, actually, everybody gave us that standard around what's important. I actually think it's probably at a point where we're going to have to start reviewing it, because there's been new technologies, and you've probably had quite a lot of discussions around wellness initiatives and those sorts of things. Those aren't currently captured within the audit, but I think it should be something living and reflects the way that forestry does things these days. So essentially, even with 12, that wasn't even our worst year. So Mike Cosman, who was part of the review team, called it forestry's dirty little secret. So 2023, we're at 1, now probably at 2. What do we think about that, given that we were at a dozen and we're now probably at 2 for this year? What do you think about that?
I think they could still be, it can still be finished out at 0.
Yep.
But it requires a lot of buy-in to meeting the standards and the requirements of our operations.
Yep. So this is a trend, and I guess what I'm saying is too good enough. It's not good enough, eh? So great, we can pat ourselves on the back, it's coming down, but we're still killing people. So that's why this is, I think, certification is one of those levers, is really still really important work, right? Cool, okay. So I guess that, in a lot of things, what's the with them? What's in it for me in terms of Safetree certification? So Safetree certification is a signal to the crew, their families, forest owners and the community that you meet an industry standard for health and safety. Does that resonate, or does that you go, I'm not sure about that? Does that make sense? Because that's probably been at the core of all of this, is, again, responding to our social license to operate. There's got to be something that we undertake that sets a standard that presents more professional countenance to the other industries in the community.
Joe, can I ask, just off the top of my head, is there any, has there been any work about the fatalities that have occurred with certification having been implemented, that any of those fatalities were with certified contractors?
So this was one of my, so I've been with Safetree now for over 12 months, and in that time, including today, there's been 3 fatalities. I can tell you that, and this is a little bit about our relationship with WorkSafe, that our ability to derive some learnings out of all of those things, whether they're certificated or not, for me it doesn't mean, I just want to know what happened. What are the learnings that come out of that, and therefore what could we do differently. So we even to this point we still struggle to get any information. So you would have seen the one from October last year in Tairāwhiti, where they've decided not to prosecute. There's still, I've been asking for a while, what do we know? What could we tell people? Because at the moment, everyone goes, I wonder what happened there. And for me, if we're going to, if there's a positive outcome out of any of those fatalities, is what could we have learnt so that we can prevent those things from happening in the future? Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm bringing here.
Yep.
When you say to the crew and their families,
Yep. Yep.
I go around and I take the person with me that goes and does the audits and everything like
Yes.
that, and I forget, the guys are really good when that person goes around, but we get a certificate, but they don't know who Safety is.
Yep.
They don't know who Safety is.
Yeah, so sometimes we, so we've recognised that as well, but we've tried to do a much better job, particularly with not only with the crew but also with whānau, when might be a great time to present that certificate and talk about that. So I've presented a few certificates to crews on whānau days, when we've had everyone there and everyone's talked about it, why it was important, the fact that this crew has for the third time completed their safety certificate. Why is it important? Because of these things. So we're if you look at some of our newsletters and things, that's why we try to promote that in terms of saying this is what it's about. But yeah, do we have headroom to improve? Absolutely, absolutely. So how widespread is certification? So currently, it's just ticked over 300. Safety organisations that have been certified. So that's a little over 300. That's the highest it's ever been. But what I can tell you is so they can be big crews or lots of crews, depending. So on average, there's about 15 employees per crew, per 300. So that's about 4,500. So on that estimate, we estimate, WorkSafe had us between 9 and 10,000 full-time equivalents in the forestry sector. So there's pure harvesting and silviculture. So between 9 and 10,000. So we currently sit as a little over half of all of those employees have come under certification. So are we getting critical mass? Yes, that's how widespread it is at the moment.
So do you compare that to a percentage of harvesting contractors that is employed in New Zealand?
So most of those 300 are harvesters. We probably struggle a little bit with getting Sylvie crews on board, but we're getting more and more of those. And the area that we struggle in the most is within the woodlot, but we're getting a number of those through now. So it's taken a while to get that stuff going.
What percentage of those crews that are certified are of the total number of crews working in New Zealand? Do you have those numbers?
No, because so nobody's got a single register of crews. We make an attempt, but we try to work through who's still trading, who isn't, who's new. So we've got a reasonable number in some areas that we think are pretty tight. Others we're a little bit. You probably have a little bit more idea.
We did a third-party project a couple of, maybe now 2 years ago, getting close to 2 years. We went and got someone to actually go from top to bottom of New Zealand and actually assign who they thought forest contractors were. And we came up with about 680. And that was not including really the one-man bands. We just got, people who were registered business names and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And so from 2 years ago, of course, as we've gone through COVID and as we've gone through the weather events, I can tell you that the numbers have certainly reduced. So 300 at about half of what I'm saying. I think that feels about right. So that is an interesting thing. Sometimes, when we do go back through recertification, we found a number of them at the moment, up and down the country, not just in the weather-affected areas, struggling with the market, who've gone out, who are no longer trading. So difficult. Which is sort of ironic that our numbers are increasing in terms of certification. So a big part of it has been, in the early days in terms of getting certified organisations on board, was getting the endorsement of the bigger players. So this was a representation of the bigger players now that endorse certification, and that certainly made a difference. If I think about New Zealand forest managers there, so given the wind throw, one of the reasons why they previously weren't requiring of it, now since they've gone into the recovery, they had to, as you know, they've introduced a whole number of new crews into there. I think they used to run between 8 and 12 crews. I think they're close to 40 now. And one of the things that they worked through, two things. They wanted to optimise recovery, and two, they wanted to do that recovery safely. And they didn't know a lot of the crews well. And of course, they had PCBU obligations as part of doing their due diligence around, do they have good, but they did know SafeTree. So they used that as part of their due diligence process. So all those crews that have started, a number of them were already certified, others had to go work their way through that process to give forest managers confidence around their health and safety systems as an example. Timberlands is another one that's a big player for us. Missing throughout this time, but now on board. And what they do is they've always run internal certification. And because SafeTree is every 2 years, so what they do now is they alternate between their internal one and SafeTree. When I talked to Ian Barrett, their interest was they recognise themselves as a big player in the market, and they wanted to be supportive of a national certification process. Yep.
Just quick note: is NZ Forest Owners logo should be there, or they not?
Not as a entity,
Right.
but so these are the ones that have made their call within their contractor pool to say we need certification. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So one of the useful things around certification is once you've achieved your certification, then you go into a public register. So you can go on our SafeTree website and go and see all the organisations that are SafeTree certified. Go and look at those. And useful for lots of different reasons, but as I said earlier, one of the areas that we found hardest to penetrate is in the woodlot sector. And so we've done quite a bit of promotion with farmers, whether that be at field days or through publications, promoting that if a farmer is looking to engage a contractor, they can do their PCBU obligations. Part of it can be around seeing whether or not they're certified or not, and go through that process. So,
It's been fixed, but not that long ago, you put in the area and no one comes up.
okay, well that's good.
Yeah, so it might be
Okay.
I just noticed, and then we weren't on there, but we were, and then I got that side sorted.
I think that's So we've just recently.
You just disappear. Yeah, you disappear, and then there's none.
Yep.
And I looked up the area, Hawke's Bay, and I was like, okay, there's no. There was only a few people, and I was like, I know there's heaps.
So we've just changed platforms. So we've had a couple of bugs like that. Yeah.
I think that's why we weren't sure.
So we've still got all the historical stuff just to make sure that we haven't lost people in that process. But if you're clicking that, I'll go back and find out what's happened there. Was yeah, I know they had a bit of that maybe 6 months ago, so I'd hope that that's fixed.
Sorry, on that note,
Yes.
what do we I got the email at we're due for certification.
Yes.
And I've clicked green go about 4 times over like 3 months and I haven't heard anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I emailed last week and just said we're ready for it. But
Yes.
and then I go onto the eco portal, is it that one?
Okay. Yes.
I can't see anything on it.
Okay, I will follow that up for you.
Yeah, so I was just
That's
like,
not good.
I'll ask all I need.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
I meant to check with. 'Cause I
yeah.
was like,
Well, that's a critical step that we should have got right. It's,
yeah, because the last platform you could go on and book your audit, whereas this one has nothing on there.
No, so so I'll go through the process as it stands at the moment, but yeah, we're no longer on that BroGen platform anymore. Yeah, okay. But that so other than maybe not looking from a region point of view, that's how that sits at the moment. Hopefully that's working better right now. So for principle, safety certification shows you the value you accrue by meeting New Zealand employment standards. I almost pull this out, but because there's sometimes interpretation challenges within employment law, and coming from an HR background, believe me, that's everywhere, not just in forestry. So this is, I guess, just a headline from Forestry Audit reveals widespread breaches in employment standards, and it's those audits are from the Labour Inspectorate. So since then, 2017, we meet with the Inspectorate every quarter to say what's happening out there, and we want to know what's happening from a forestry point of view. So so we just wanted to highlight, because employment standards are part of the audit, and these are some of the things that came out that the Labour Inspectorate gave us feedback on. So peace rates. So where peace rates are used in the industry, there is a risk that rates paid to employees may not equate to a prescribed minimum hourly rate. So sometimes when people on a peace rate convert it back to an hourly rate, they're not having the minimum wage number. So we've had some of that. We've had some of that. Start and finish times. This is always a bit of a contentious one. And to be honest, we're still looking for better clarification from the Inspectorate on this. But considering the industry, the travel times that are involved in getting to and back from a place of work should be counted as time work. This would apply to individuals who need to gather at a location and transported to and from the area of work where the work needs to be performed. So, what do you think about that?
We pay travel time.
You pay travel time, right? Yep. Do you pay travel time as travel time, or do you pay at a different rate?
Same content with the
Yep.
season.
Cool. Yep. Anybody else?
We require,
Yep.
it's part of our contract, we require travel time and it's part of your total hours.
Yep. Cool. Well, that's excellent to hear, because that doesn't always happen. We have people, for example, fixing a separate travel rate for travel from their normal hourly rate. But so I'm pleased that you look bemused by that I would even put that up. That's great, but that happens. Okay, we get a lot of feedback on that, and again, I still think that the Inspectorate needs to give us more clarification than might come from case law.
So you're not saying, but are you saying paid travel from home to work that's like 20 minutes?
No. So this is what that's right. Well, this is what because the inspector was saying, well, but if it's less than half an hour, I said, well, when did you pull half an hour out? So that's why we struggle a little bit with the clarification that we've got. But there's a principle around once they're in the vehicle and they're going to work, they're available. Yep. So you've got to pay for that time. Yep.
So those three that you have up there sort of tend to look for me like silvicultural comments to silvicultural sort of work?
There's a bit of a mix, actually, because that was my reaction as well. Certainly some of the piece rate stuff was definitely from a silvicultural perspective, but the travel times, there's been lots of feedback from harvesting crews on that one. And the last one was related to that other one in terms of the required PPE should be provided by the employer. So I think what we were saying on that one, if it's a non-taxable, it might be other PPE that might not be on the required list, that they might have some freedom to go and get remunerated for.
Safety territory, but it's important that we think about our engineering and roading teams and part of that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, yeah, that's right. I think so within the forest gate, we've got forestry workers, we've got log haulage, we've got repair and maintenance crews, and all the rest of it. Our focus is clearly on forestry, but I think there's an opportunity, and at some stage there could be a requirement that becomes more fulsome. Okay, so on the Safe Tree certification process at the moment. It's a simple register on Safe Tree, so you should get an acknowledgement straight away on that. There's a completion of a desktop audit. We strongly recommend that you go and have a look at pull down the Safe Tree audit, the template, because it's available, so you can see what you're going to be audited on. Some people don't bother, and they turn up and say, "What are you going to have a look at?" And for me, that's just good homework to say, where am I at, and am I prepared? And then the final one is the field audit. So those notes across the other side there. So it's a Safe Tree, or FISC is a charitable trust. So it's a not-for-profit program supported by the Forest Growers Levy Trust, and works safe and run by FISC. There's the annual fee of $400, so that goes back to support both our admin and also our IT platform. Doesn't cover it, but it used to be $600, but we reduced it to make that more accessible. In terms of audit, so we have a number of auditors, all independent contractors, and an audit for the cost of a field audit will be generally lies between $1,200 and $3,500, depending on. So it can depend on if there's multiple crews, or sometimes can depend on disbursements in terms of travel and other things, but generally in that range. So on average, the cost of an audit for a contract from a contractor point of view is $1,800 every 2 years. So it's a 2-year cycle. Yep. Questions? No. Okay, so the other part of the certification program is the worker certification. So the two high-risk operations of manual tree falling and manual breaking out. We have a separate worker-specific program that runs through that. We've really lifted the number over the last couple of years in terms of those that are not only achieving that audit, but that's an annual process. So particularly around these sorts of operations, we will want to see demonstration that people have been able to maintain their competence, and that's why it's not 2 years. That's why that's yearly. For tree falling and for breaking out. Trying to do a better job of promoting the Safe Tree. Yep. Okay, just about there. Those of you who have gone to the Safe Tree website, you might have gone there for the certification process, but there's multiple resources that are available on the website. But one of the things that we are working through at the moment is, so we're trialling, just for your info, we're trialling a Safe Tree mobile app. So people can go home and access this, on their laptops at home and all the rest of it. But the idea of having a mobile app just gives us a little bit more mobility. So not all the resources are on there. So we're trialling resources like ACOP, current ACOP, and also tailgate resources. So if you're standing, on a setting somewhere and just want to look at something on the ACOP or whatever, we hope to be able to do that through the mobile app. So we're still trialling that at the moment. A couple of things to work through. But I think we've got about 25 crews that are using this at the moment. Yeah. So if you're interested in that, we can add some more if we, interested in that. On the note you get there's the contact numbers for myself, for John Lowe, Certification Manager, and our 0800 number if you want to grab those.
You're going to get your phone calls?
Yeah. Well, let's just follow that.
Any plans to extend Harry Pets to a little bit more August LB clean?
We are trying to work through various forest managers in terms of how do we're doing that at the moment. We're trying to get more Sylvie crews involved and engaged. We've had a lot of questions around with the contract certification. Some people say, look, we know we achieve the standard we have every year. That crew down the road, they're not as good as us, and they've got certification as well. But we're doing extras that we think, we want to keep lifting the standard and enhancing what's delivered. So there's quite a bit of feedback around trying to develop a second tier of contractor certification that achieve an enhanced set of standards over and above the current standard. So we're doing a bit of work in that. We have come up with a name for the standard, which would be the canopy standard, but it's all the hard work underneath that we haven't done yet. And we're also looking at forest manager certification as well as a few bit of feedback around doing something like that. So, yeah.
What about, and I know this is, I don't know how you do it because it's a contract to pay, but monitoring in between those 2 years?
Yep. So, we've had similar questions, particularly if there's an observation of someone doing something that's clearly not in keeping with the standard. We got legal counsel onto that in terms of what are our rights with respect to going in and potentially recertifying or investigating a reported breach. So our legal basis provides us with the opportunity to do that. So we met with all of our auditors last week. We try to meet for a couple of days every year, talking about peer review and moderation, those sorts of things. But we talked about this sort of thing as well around the ability to go back and potentially suspend certification if there's been a significant breach. I would always hope that if there is a breach that we would go back and there'd be some remediation that happens and can work our way through that. But we've got the legal right if we deem it necessary to suspend if required.
As you, WorkSafe wouldn't by any chance have been in contact about the approved code of practice and the guideline process for quick updates?
Yes.
Yeah, that's from prior to the cyclone.
I don't want to say we've been frustrated. We've been waiting patiently ever since I've started. So over 12 months ago, we offered to support and review parts of that. We can get technical advisor groups, tags together, full of subject matter experts, SMEs, and look at some specific things. So they finally assigned 4 sections of the current ACOP to us to review. We set up 4 working groups. We've had a couple of meetings and drafted some edits on those. Some were pretty good. Others, they felt that it doesn't reflect current practice, and we needed to add some more things in there. So that's still sitting as a draft, and I'm hoping that at our operations advisory group meeting, we have the guy from WorkSafe who's running the program. he's coming to present where we're at, and I've also said to him, I want you to tell the group what we're doing with the 4 sections and how is that going to go to broader consultation, and I want you to tell us if we're going to get some more because we want to get going. So that's where we sit in terms of what we're trying to coordinate on behalf of WorkSafe, just to get some people, getting around the table and sharing their views around, what needs to be revised, what needs to be deleted, what needs to be edited, what's new.
And FISC has been given the silviculture and the Yada Tower inspection section to look at. So we're pulling together a silviculture action group at the end of January. Yeah, just to go through that, which will be, it's only 2 pages at the moment in the ACOP, so it shouldn't be too hard to update it.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of things that where you go, boy, that was a big,
I know.
That was a big miss. I think the other thing is also, we're almost across the line on it, I think, but there was a lot of discussion around the fact that the ACOP, once you establish an ACOP, the only way that you can change that is that it's got to go back through Cabinet as an approved code of practice. So that process hardly ever works in terms of timeliness. It's quite difficult. So has to go back. Well, it has to go back through Cabinet and then has to be signed off by the Minister, but only contingent on approval from Cabinet. So trying to get time on Cabinet just to look at an ACOP, so that it's a bit static, that process, and doesn't always reflect current practice or new technologies or those sorts of things. So the discussions that we've been having with WorkSafe is that if they just had it as a code of practice as opposed to an approved code of practice, then it's still within the industry's ability to have input in terms of any updates or changes they want to do without having to go back through that Cabinet loop. We think it's much smarter, and we also think that we want to reference more of the better practice guides, BPGs, as long as those BPGs are being revised on a regular basis, that they could become the reference. WorkSafe will still use those, so why don't you reference them within the ACOP? That's been our argument.
And when will that come out for general review, or will it not come out? It'll just be.
No, it will come out. It will come out for a further industry engagement.
Has to.
Yeah.
Our guys are going and saying, look, this is, we've just got this group and we've worked hard to come up with some changes, but they've done that knowing that it needs to go out to more people to get their views on that, because that's not in concrete, that's still fluid. But we don't own that process. WorkSafe owns that process. And we're keen to see them move on that.
Do you think what's happening with SAFE at the moment is impacting things where we're at
Yes.
with that?
Yeah.
Yes. Jim, who's was in charge of the ACOP review, and he's now a single person.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he doesn't have anyone supporting him at the moment. That's my understanding, which is even more reason for us to say, look, you need to hold hands with us, and we're not trying to kneel you, we're trying to help you because it's important for us. Yeah. So
He's going to be here at some stage.
Jim, yeah.
When was that something?
Jim, what's Jim's last
Jim
name?
Francis.
Yeah. So he certainly does the rounds with the wood councils and AOG and whatnot. So, but his resources have diminished. So I don't know what will pop up for him from a resourcing point of view later. So I wouldn't suspect that would stay like that. But right now, he's a single person doing that work.
Sounds more like he's doing bad. Bless him.
I think so. And look, look, there's lots of talks around how they might restructure and other things, but there are some important structures for forestry. We're one of the few sectors that have a forest engagement manager. So the ability to understand what's happening in WorkSafe or have some influence wouldn't happen without that conduit at the moment. So I would hate to see that structure removed, definitely.
If it's a reflection on how the best practice guidelines is going for the hauler guarding project, they've very much said back to industry, you pull it together. We've finally got the best we can get for their endorsement because they've had a WorkSafe team go over it. And, that is going to come out and draft to the rest of the industry for Christmas reading, so you can take it away with you on your 4 weeks holiday.
What's that? Come out on the 22nd and have submissions back by the
Just
4th?
no. Well, we're driving it. We're driving it, so it's kind of good actually that WorkSafe, they're in a position where they can't do that sort of stuff actually, so they've got to rely on industry to do it. So, yeah.
Cool.
So Joe, thank you very
No
much.
problem.
Yeah, awesome.
Start off certification.
Yeah.